having like a comic book and sending a comic book to people you want to connect to, that is so unique and nobody does that.
And the truth of the matter is, it's a better way to contact people because, again, not everybody's going to read 10, 15 pages. We want to get to the answer really quickly. It's a flow, it's a mindset, attacks us differently with our visual side.
Please help me welcome David Chametzky to our powerful podcast, our powerful show. He's a deep message expert. He's a speaker, an author, podcast host, and producer. I was actually featured on his show. Very excited to talk a bit about that. If you want to check out that conversation, we had a lot of fun. But through his content and teachings, he brings insights and a unique guiding principle so others can grow and overcome obstacles. And he serves both business owners and corporations, and very excited, he actually also creates comic books where you can become your superhero, the superhero version of you, or you can create like a League of Justice with your friends. David, welcome to our conversation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be part of your show and to talk to you again.
Likewise. So tell us a bit about, your journey, because I know before becoming an expert, you have decades of experience in the corporate world. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. To be an expert, you have to have lots of years of learning and growth. So really, I've been in just left corporate America, 30 years of corporate America. I was in legal. I wasn't a lawyer. I was a paralegal. I was a little bit more than that. My boss used to call me a paralegal on steroids because I did so much more. There was one of those things that they would always just give me projects and I'd figure it out and be able to kind of make sure everybody
It's
else looked
cool.
good. Doing that, but I also, when I went to college, I had my bachelor's degree in behavioral sciences. So that was always something that interested me. And then probably about 10 or 15 years ago, I had put myself into therapy for, just going through life challenges. And I started learning some of these techniques and it reinvigorized my quest for knowledge on what I started out with behavioral science in my bachelor's degree. And as I started doing it, I started assisting people get certified in a couple of ways and learned some really cool techniques. And one of the techniques I learned taught me how to help people through very traumatic events. And I was like, wow. And it was working for me. I wanted to test it out with others. And that's really what started part of my journey into healing and working in, you know, the mentoring space. Because
Hmm.
once I started learning what I went through, I knew that, but I also then knew how I can guide other people through it, and that's where I created my mentoring
Can
practice on the path.
can I ask you, like, what was one of the biggest? I know we love to throw this word around. I think trauma is treasure in many ways, but what was one of the traumas that you had to deal with and heal that had a huge impact on you once you did?
Yeah, the first one that I really, which really kind of freaked me out, and it didn't. Growing up, my dad was he was a yeller, not and there was there was a few times that he used to point at me, and it would trigger me into an anger or defense mechanism, and I wasn't aware of it. When I went into therapy that time, the therapist is talking to me, and we started working through just that aspect of it. And this had happened 20 years prior, or maybe even more. But the real challenge there was I didn't know it. And then when I started telling people who knew me, they were like, "Oh yeah, we knew that. Dave, we knew not to necessarily point at you, or that was a trigger." I was like, "Huh, you guys knew it. Why didn't
Interesting.
anybody tell me?" But at that time, I wasn't really open to hearing things. I wasn't the person I am now, and that was one of the
Yeah.
things that I always remember, and I share that with people because of the fact that it's really important. We don't always recognize everything that we've gone through or our coping mechanisms to deal with that. Once you can do that and learn that and move forward through that, that's really where healing comes into it.
Yeah, I can. definitely resonate with that. My mother is a yeller as well. So whenever anybody raises their voice at me, I feel like, my spine, like hairs up my spine go up, and I'm like, my eyes instantly change. I'm like in attack mode. Yeah, I can relate to that a lot.
Yeah, we don't realize it, until you're aware of your behaviors or somebody brings attention to it, it might be just normal. So we just think that's the normal way of going through things,
Yeah,
and which it's not, but it's
doesn't
our coping
everybody
mechanism.
doesn't everybody just do the same thing, right? Well, apparently not. That's cool. That's cool. And how does your work, the healing aspect of things, I can understand it. I can see how it combines with the business elements, right? But how do you personally bring healing to your work with businesses, business owners, companies, and so on?
Well, that's a great question. So I do it a couple of different ways. So first, we just have these conversations, and for a while, I was leading with the mental wellness, the traumas, and really at some point, I shifted my business to talk about the books that I wrote, and it's not about the books I personally wrote. Most of us have books or several books within us, but we don't write those books because of the limiting beliefs that we have within ourselves. Same thing with business. There's a lot of things that we don't do because of our limiting beliefs. And once we're able to manage our limiting beliefs, we can then be unstoppable. And that's what I did is I pivoted my business because I've spoken on many stages. There's a lot of people who want to get on stages. How do you do that? Well, I know I'm in Toastmasters. I'm a DTM, which is that distinguished Toastmaster. I've spoken on a TEDx stage. I have written a bunch of books that have been Amazon #1 bestsellers. Then I've also had a
That's cool.
podcast in the top 1% of the world uh, by Live Notes. So it's all these things I could teach people how to do it. And once we find the strength in our voice, so now how do we do that? Is finding our limiting beliefs. What do we need to do? What do we need to fine tune in our lives, organize in our lives to make it aligned? And that's where my success has been. And then I'm always looking to do the things that people don't want to do, can't do, or haven't even thought about doing. And when you do that, you take your business to the next level. And that's where the power comes into it. I mean, just recently, you and I were talking. I had started a comic book. People like a comic book. What do you do that? How do you do that? I was like, it's a little bit more expensive, but I have to tell you, there's a bigger message in it, and it's easier than writing a book.
That is so cool. That is so cool. And to kind of circle back in terms of the limiting beliefs, I was looking at my best clients. The fact was, my approach is very much okay, let's talk business strategy, but equally as important, let's talk limiting beliefs. And with my best clients, all of our conversations are around limiting beliefs and mindset and amplifying their confidence, their energy. You know what I mean? And they get the best results. So it's very, very interesting. The people that understand the importance of this and understand this language, they're really high performers. Um, but yeah, tell us more about the comic book. What's the story behind that, and
Yeah.
how can
So
it help?
yeah. So the comic book for me was a I came up with this story. I was going through a dark period. I had just attempted suicide. Even though I knew all the right answers, how to help people, I wasn't helping myself, which is
Mm,
mainly a lot of our problems, right? We could
yeah.
all give people advice and give them the right advice, but not always looking back at ourselves. So now I take that position of I always make sure I put the air mask on myself before I help others. By helping by myself and loving myself in a different way that I can now love and be part of other people. So the comic book, I wrote the story and I was like, man, this is such a good story. I need a movie out of it. I could picture it in a movie and I still can. But when I started looking at the pricing on how to do that, it's above my pay grade. I couldn't afford that. Uh, but
Yeah.
I had friends who had a
But
comic book company, and I said, "Hey, how do we do this?" They go, "Well, you've already written the story, which is sometimes the hardest part. Now the easy part is let the professionals do exactly what they do." And that's also one of the missions on coaching and mentoring, right? You sometimes need people, hire them out, when you need an expert. I couldn't draw anything. I could do photography, but I'm not an artist that can do any drawing. So I found through the connections, a high level person who worked for Dark Horse, a independent contractor who worked for Dark Horse comic books, and so it's a high quality. It's again, you could have anything you want. If you want to pay something cheap, you might get exactly that. I wanted a high quality comic book, and so with my story, it's called the Pathfinder. I knew what the story was going to be about. It was
Can
sort of
you
the story of
can you
Sisyphus
pull
about
can you pull it
pushing
up?
that rock
So
up the hill. Oh, yeah, sure, of course I can. Yeah.
that is so cool. I love it. It reminds me of this other comic book. I forget the name, but it's the one with Omni Man. Not sure if you're familiar. I'll Google it while you in this
Okay.
conversation, but it's really
Yeah.
cool.
So
So tell us the story behind it. Yeah.
it's yeah, so it's a little bit of the story of Sisyphus is, the guy who pushed the rock up the hill and then pushed it back down, it rolled back down and he would keep pushing it up. We all go into through those periods in our lives where we repeat our patterns. And sometimes we embrace those things like Sisyphus did. He eventually didn't like it. He hated it. And then he knew that that was his task in life. And much like my task in life is to make sure that I impact as many people as possible by telling them we can roll the rock up the hill, but we can get through it. And the rock up the hill is only part of our story. So this story is about a gentleman who had an argument with his wife and then just went into this magical world and found Mr. 5S. Mr. 5S is not only about Sisyphus, but it's also about touching our five senses. So when we want to heal ourselves, there are five different ways when we touch into our senses. Move that energy, see where the blockages are, and depending on who you are and depending on the circumstances, you might be able to stop pushing the rock up the hill and heal yourself by seeing how life intertwines with our emotions and our feelings and move forward.
That is so cool. So the comic book that it reminds me of is called Invincible. The drawing style, at least, very cool. But what you're talking about right now reminds me of another show, The Last Airbender. The kid meets this master, and he shows the kid. You know the scene, right? How
Yeah,
to
I know it well. Yeah.
unlock all the chakras. So it sounds like it's a similar experience.
Yeah, that's the hopes. So I hope to have more books, but that are out there. So that's the first one, and then I've also used it as a marketing tool. I mean, part of the story, how I rewove the story, also talks about the business that I do, how I assist people through the darkest, where they can't see the path. Sometimes we have to go through that the tougher, and we a lot of people go through the easy path, and sometimes you need to go to the more difficult piece of life to learn the best lessons. An easy, as they say, a ship captain who sails in the bay is usually not a good ship captain. You got to go out to the sea, feel the waves, and experience the storms of life.
This is so cool. I mean, everybody talks about writing a book to create leads. I actually had Kimberly Day on the show. She's exceptional in this sense. But having like a comic book and sending a comic book to people you want to connect to, that is so unique and nobody does that.
Well, yeah, because the upfront cost is a little expensive, but after that, it's the same thing as any other book. And the truth of the matter is, it's a better way to contact people because again, not everybody's going to read 10, 15 pages. Let's be honest. No matter with the compilations, there's other ways to go about it. And being visual, most of us are visual, especially in today's world. We want to get to the answer really quickly. Well, here's
Yeah.
still 30 pages, but it's a flow, it's a mindset. It attacks us differently with our visual side versus just the auditory, and there's a lot of different ways that we can turn this into so much based on the writing that we do.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying the episode. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're making more than six figures and you want to collapse time between where you are right now and your goals, you want to scale your business with a lot more freedom, a lot more fun, a lot more joy from this experience. And like I mentioned, do it faster. I have something that will help. Just like I did my clients. For example, Yoshwin was actually afraid to grow his $120 million a year business because he was afraid he was going to make a mistake that would cost him millions. I quickly got him unstuck and well on his way to doubling the business. Another example, Jessica, she was making 10K a month, but she was stressed out, overwhelmed, overworked, close to burnout, and she was actually kind of hating her business. She quickly scaled to 25K a month while actually working less and having more fun in the business. And I do it through my Warrior Shaman system. If you'd like to learn more about how this system can help you achieve your goals, like I mentioned, with more freedom, fun, and just less grind, less hustle, there's a link below where you can learn more. Now let's get back to the episode. That is so cool. I love that. And you do you
Yeah,
assist
just recently,
people?
just recently, I've worked with some groups, some clubs and things like that, where we have several members, and then they create, as you said earlier, like that League of Justice idea. The Doctor X, where there might be one person who is the expert, and you have other people working with him to achieve problems and overcome challenges. And that's been a deal breaker in a lot of ways because then it absorbs some of the cost, but it also then has the potential to still show you being a superhero, showing your expertise in your field. And that's where people have been amazed. They're like, well, I just do this. I don't know how you're going to make me a superhero. And I do. I find it. I dig down through the specialty, through the interviews. And once we do that, you turn that to the next level. That's where it really becomes something really more powerful when people could see you not only as a superhero but solving some serious problems.
That is so fun. I love that so much. And yeah, I think it's absolutely unique because like you can give it to your kids, but you're gonna read it first because like more mature. All of us grew up with
Yeah,
comic books and
I've
superheroes.
had friends say, "Hey, can I give it to my kid?" And the first time I did that, there's just one word in it that was inappropriate, and it was the S word. I want to be respectful to your show, but it wasn't really a curse word.
Which
And then
which
when
S word
he
was that?
shit, yeah, I mean it was yeah, I don't mind saying it.
Yeah, I
I grew
use
up in
fuck a
Brooklyn, man.
lot
That's
in
not a curse.
I use fuck a lot in these interviews, so it's
Oh,
you're more
okay.
than
Yeah, no,
welcome.
okay. But yeah, so there was the word shit in it, and he was like, it was okay. It was a young child, but he was like, yeah, it's okay. He's heard worse in our house, but that's the only thing I always say when if they want to give it to somebody, I go, look, there is one word in it. I tell them what the word is, and you can make a decision, but it is readable by anybody who can read. And
Yeah,
it's all appropriate. There's nothing inappropriate in the book. You want to make sure that that happens when you work with clients. You want to make sure it's translatable to other people, no matter what their background is.
that's cool. That's cool. And speaking of profanity, when I was a kid, like everybody knew this thing about me that I wouldn't use any swear words, like no matter what. But then I thought about it, like this thing is so weird. They're describing natural parts of the human experience, like shitting, fucking, whatever else. Why, in Romanian we say we hide behind the finger. I don't get it. I don't get why we're still doing this.
Yeah, I think it's that old school mentality, and I grew up, on the flip side. So I grew up in Brooklyn, and we use those words regularly, and
Right.
so which was inappropriate, not because of the words, but like there's times you don't need it. If you monitor, it's like anything else. If you can monitor your behavior when you then do something differently, when you use a word. it becomes much more impactful versus if you use it all the time, it doesn't,
True,
it loses some of the impact.
true, true. I agree. I agree. I think a lot of it has to do like with the whole Catholic, in my country, the Orthodox Church. Interesting stuff. I was also very
Yeah, no,
religious when I was a
I
kid.
think that's right. I think it's the old conservative, not looking politically, but the old conservative. We shouldn't do that. We should be fearful of religion, and like
Hmm.
in Europe, all the big cathedrals, even here in the States, the big cathedrals, right? God is this scary thing, but it's really not, right?
Yeah.
God isn't. God's a loving God that we shouldn't be able to walk into his home, and be scared. If anything, it should be the opposite. That really should be our sanctuary.
I think the core of it is very powerful, like in the sense that words have tremendous power and they can dictate your state and, basically your reality. But the layer that we added as a collective in terms of the fear around it, don't do it, it's forbidden, or blah blah, it just made the sense of it, the core of it, get lost in many ways. But I think it's coming back to the surface in many different ways.
For sure. Yeah, no, and I think that there is a huge piece of that is that forbidden piece. So as a kid, like I said, I use the words all the time because you feel more like an adult, right?
Right.
You be an adult by using those curse words, and it doesn't make you an adult, right? As we've learned as we get older, there's so much more that becomes more valuable. But at the end of the day, we do what we do, and we learn through those processes. At some point, people are like, "What are you doing?" And or you get into episodes of your life or occurrences, and you're like, "It's not appropriate." I mean, I worked 30 years in corporate experience. In the corporate experience, there were times that people cursed. Now there was
Yeah.
different times that they didn't. But so it wasn't that it's this place again, this cathedral, that we can't use this language. People are people, and if once we realize that people are people and what we do and how we do it, that's the real power that comes into things. That's the real
Yeah.
power about being authentic. That's what we were talking about on my podcast. Peace, love, and bring a bat. It's all about being authentic today. And once we dive into our authenticity, that's where our real power is. That's where we get through those limiting beliefs, because the limiting beliefs hold us back, and being our most authentic self, as long as you're proper and keep learning, you're just going to keep soaring.
Yeah, and it's not easy because, it's like people say, I don't know what I want to do. That's never true. It's never true. You always know what you want to do, but you don't think that what you want to do is marketable, that people will actually be interested in that thing as much as you are. Like, for example, when I was finishing high school, my dad asked me, like, where am I going to college? I said, I don't know, right? But the fact was, I did know. I loved martial arts, but I didn't believe I could make a living out of it
Right.
until I did, right? So it's never that you don't know who you are. You do, but you're afraid that the real version of you will be rejected by the world. And it will be, right? Maybe the majority of the world will reject you, but that small percentage that really get you, that's all you need.
Well, that's exactly right. It's that small percentage that really takes us to that next level, and through that next level, that's where the power comes in. And knowing it, yeah, we most of the times we might not know an answer. At times, there are times we won't know. Maybe you didn't know if you want to go to college. You knew you wanted to do martial arts, but that's the part that, hey, I can't tell them that because they're not going to believe in me. I have to now fall into line. But eventually, you did what you needed to do to be your most authentic self, and you've obviously been very successful doing that. And that's really what it is when you're able to step out and do what you need to do and be who you are. So I'll tell you another story. About a year ago, before I lost the position was eliminated, and they do these assessments, right? In corporate America, they like to do assessments. They like to make sure who falls in line and who doesn't. So I did one of those DISC assessments, which are good. And
Yep.
I was so far out of the cluster. I knew, and in the right area, it was completely appropriate. And I'm like, if there's no other example, and I use this all the time, that I didn't belong there anymore, that was it. It was, and people are like, oh, I don't feel bad. Maybe the results, maybe it was the day. And I even asked the instructors, and like just trying to understand it, and they're trying to like poo poo it. They're trying to go, don't worry, it's okay. I'm like, no, no, I'm comfortable with the results as it is. I'm just trying to figure out uh, you know, because you always want to know your strengths, but also your weaknesses. I knew
Right.
my strengths were to be this person who stood out and said what needed to be said and be respectful of people. I didn't know how to do it until I went through some of the darkest days of my life, which
Yeah.
led to the comic book.
Yeah. 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 The darkest days of your life always open the biggest doors, the biggest opportunities. You know what? Like when I lived abroad for a few years, I studied in Greece, and then I lived in Rome for 2 years. But in the beginning, like it was so hard. I had this job interview, and this super arrogant guy was like, I don't even remember what the job was. It was like going to this location or on site construction sites with a tablet, and the guy was like, "What you need to do is just follow instructions and just shut up. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to like." I was so broke. I had no money, right? And I look at the guy. I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but that's not me." And he was like taken aback. Like, what do you mean? Well, it's not the job for me because I talk. I talk a lot, right? When I went back to my girlfriend, she wanted to kill me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that's you
Yeah.
have to be who you are because if not, we're already damaging ourselves. Think about
Right.
all the times in your life that you might not have been authentic for whatever reason, right? You just want to be polite. You're with somebody who you might not agree with, but
Yeah.
how that slows you down or what it does to you. Now, if you can manage that energy differently, it becomes a completely new deal breaker. Again,
Yeah.
even that story of Sisyphus, he was originally angry that he had to push the rock up the hill. That was his punishment. Until in the middle of the story, he really goes to enjoying it, enjoying that. Sort of like I don't know if you've ever read the book Fish Tales. So
No.
it's a motivational book, but it's a book about business where the fishermen who prepare the fish in the Seattle fish market, they embrace their handling of the fish. They throw the fish. You can look at that on YouTube. But they embrace what people had interviewed them and said, "Why do you guys seem so happy? You're throwing fish. They smell. They do this." They go, "This is my job, and if I embrace my job, and this is a real message for everybody, if we embrace what we're doing, no matter what we're doing, it becomes the task we're there, being more present and enjoying it. And if you don't enjoy it, then guess what? You get to make changes. We're not a tree. You get to move. You get to think differently. And that's what I've done now. Uh, no matter what I do, I try to enjoy everything. And I don't enjoy everything. I'm not here to tell you that this is the way to go. But if you can find enjoyment or the silver lining, no matter what you go through, that's where the power is. There's so much power that we don't realize because we have expectations. I think that this is going to go differently. I want this to go the way that I want it to go versus the way that it just goes. We embrace those. We can throw those fish. We can embrace catching a fish. We can do whatever we want because it's the way we set our mind in the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so powerful and a huge reminder. We have a lot of, let's like embrace the suck. As business owners, there's a lot of stuff that you don't want to do, but like choosing to do it with a smile on your face, I think makes it lighter. So thanks for reminding me of that, me personally. That's something I'll play around with a bit more.
Yeah, and it's not just a sense of, some people say fake it till you make it. Don't fake it. Be honest with yourself, but find out. if you really, again, as you're being honest with yourself, find out what your obstacles are. Why can't you be happy in that moment? What's going on in that moment? It's not about the people that you're with, it's not about the situation, it's about inside of you. Once you control the inside of you, the rest of you really does change completely.
I love that. I love that. Beautiful. David, who do you feel should connect with you, and what should they connect with you for?
Well, I think, everybody who has a story that they want to be aligned with. One of the specialties that I do is not only help people overcome the obstacles in their way. I think everybody wants to get their story out. Everybody wants to be heard. And one of the projects I've been working on lately is working with people who just want to have their family story known. Because traditionally, after two generations, we're forgotten unless there's something there to remind us of our past. So that's one of the things. And the other people that I love working with are entrepreneurs and business owners because they want to tell their story. That's the most important part. And one of my strengths is not only did I work in intellectual property, so I know how to file the copyrights or trademarks and work that way. Even though I'm not an attorney, I wouldn't give anybody advice, but I can tell them how to and assist them in guiding to file that. I also strengthen a brand using your story and aligning your brand, making yourself congruent with who you are, who your brand is, and then using brand language. That's why sometimes you heard me talk about soaring. That's part of my brand language, using that phoenix metaphor. So, there's so many different ways to dive into your own business and take yourself to that next level once you're able to overcome those limiting beliefs.
I love that. I love that. Beautiful. Guys, connect with David. I'll put the links below. Absolutely check out his podcast. I'll also link our episode together, right? Peace, love, and bring a bat. I love that. That's my life philosophy as well. But amazing having you, and hope to have you again, David.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it. And you have a great day.
You too.